Hi everybody, this is my 1978 17-foot Boler trailer. People have been interested in a video about how I rebuilt the rear bed and bunk in it, and that's what I'm going to do in this video. There's a series of still pictures which I'll talk over and explain what I was up to. So the bunk in this trailer was very similar to other boulders. It was attached to the sidewalls, as you can see through the bracket here. And there'll be a little bit of a close-up in a minute here. And it had that 3/4 inch plywood was the actual bed. I used to sleep up there when my kids were young, and they would sleep down on the bed below. When I started rebuilding it, I realized that wasn't such a great idea because it wasn't very strong. But whatever, didn't break, everything's fine. You can see this is it folded out on the top, and you look down below there, you can see that same sort of cubby that's in most of the Boler trailers at the rear, and when the lower bed is folded down into a bed. And there's a picture of it. Obviously the kitchen's gone, and of what the rear looked like before I started doing all my work. As you can see, it's all just the standard wood frame, and the bed sort of pulls out to extend. So here's what I did to rebuild the lower lounge area, I call it, at the back of the trailer. I wanted to use 80/20. It's a type of aluminum channel. It's used in a lot of van builds, and I thought it would give me a lot of strength. It's also heavier than the traditional way of building in the trailer, which has been a bit of a curse through this whole rebuild. The trailer is quite a bit heavier than it used to be. It comes out to 3,300 pounds when I'm all ready to go on the road. So this is built the same size as the original cabinet was on the side, just built out of the 80/20. Also, you can see there's two 1/2 inch stainless steel rods leading up from the 80/20, and that's what's going up to support the upper bunk, which I'll talk about later on in a little more detail. The black tubes you see are from Truma forced air furnace that I'm using in this trailer. As a lot of you guys know, that hole at the far side there is kind of useless. I've never really found a good use for putting things down there. So I used some 80/20 to make a sliding bracket and actually put a little monitor on there so I can use it as a TV. This is the other side, same sort of 80/20, but you can see everything's lower on that side. I built a bit of a drop down thing. You'll see pictures of it later on. Something to lean against, and also a place to store your sleeping stuff. Because I was transferring the load from that upper bunk bed down to the floor instead of the walls of the trailer, which you'll be able to see in a little bit here, I had a welder add in two extensions on both sides of the trailer to try and take up some of that load that was normally just on the plywood. I've got two on this side, and then there's two more on the other side that they're little outriggers from the frame to hold the load. This is the Truma hot water heater and furnace that I put in the trailer, and that's what's feeding those tubes that go around the backside of the trailer that you saw in the previous pictures. It's really nice. Unfortunately, they're not available in Canada right now. For the lower Gaucho, what I did is built this wooden box section. I'll show you some details on it later on. And I mounted it onto two drawer slides, heavy-duty drawer slides, one on each side that mounted onto that channelized 80/20 frame on both sides, so it can slide back and forth. And again, there'll be some pictures that explain it a bit more as we go along here. So you can see a couple of things going on here. Obviously, the kitchen is now complete. And everything you see is mostly covered in 1/8 inch maple plywood, finished in a oil-based polyurethane. The top of that cabinet up at the top of the photo there is covered in 3/4 inch maple. And the little handle you see there, the main one, that pulls up, and that's got the TV underneath it. And the little handle you see on the left actually has a water filter underneath there. The actual bench you see below you, which obviously turns into a bed, the part to the left is attached to a drawer slide, and the part to the right, it folds up so it can go up against the wall to be able to lean against there. And then you can see there's a piano hinge on there. Also, you can see the two 1/2 inch stainless steel tubes that come up from the 80/20 stuff on the bottom, and they lead up to the upper bunk, which I'll show you in a few minutes here. This is the other side. I'll show you how that little drop down thing works in a while here. But yeah, it's got the same attachment. The main part is attached to the drawer slide, and the back part is hinged so that it can go up when you want to turn it into a Gaucho. So this is staying on the same side as we just saw. The tubes down below are obviously the heating ducts. And you can see two blocks on the back side of the part that's going to lean against the wall. The big block is to ride up and down a wooden piece I put on the wall, which I'll show you in a minute. And the small block, it's got a bolt going through, a 1/4-inch bolt that goes into that bracket you see on the left there. And that just holds the bed in place so it doesn't wiggle back and forth when it's turned into a bed, so it doesn't move back and forth on the drawer slides. This is the other side of the upper part. And if you look on the wall, I've inserted a little bit of wood on there, so it's got the ability of sliding up and down on there, so you don't rip the heck out of that the bubble wrap that covers our walls. So this is with the bed pushed back, so it's in a Gaucho mode, and you can see I've got a bit of a standoff from the wall, so things don't rub as they go up and down, and you can see a close-up of the block where it runs up and down the wooden piece. This picture, you can see the two stainless steel tubes going up to the upper bunk. And I made a sort of a leaning pad when you're sleeping on the bed or sitting on the bed, so you can lean against that thing. And then in the next picture here, you'll see when it's down, you can stuff all your sleeping stuff in there. And there's just a couple of hinges that are attached to the 80/20 stuff to make that all possible. This is what the Gaucho looks like when it's in its upright position. I just got a cheap IKEA mattress on there, which I would not recommend. But that strap at the back there lets you pull the back away, so when you're pushing it up into a Gaucho from a bed, it doesn't rub on the wall quite as much, and to get it going. It works quite well overall. This is the underside of the Gaucho. You can see on the far wall there's some brackets where the drawer slides are attached to the 80/20, which of course has the 1/8-inch maple plywood over top of it. And then there's a bracket in the rear. That's the one we saw previously that the bed rests on, so it doesn't wiggle about when it's in bed mode. This frame underneath here, this is composed of 20 series 80/20. It's 20 millimeters. And it is attached to the bottom side of the Gaucho, and it moves back and forth with the Gaucho so that you can get at the storage containers I'll show you later on. Also, there's a wooden strip there that keeps the containers from coming out. This is the middle of the underside frame. You can see there's a little knob there. There's a wire that goes through to a mechanism that holds it against the wall when it's in Gaucho mode, and I'll show you a picture of that in a bit. The whole thing, like I said, sort of floats above the floor, but there is a little wooden block you can see in the front there that when you sit on the bed, on the Gaucho, or you lie on the bed, it sort of pushes down on the floor, so it supports it a little bit, so it doesn't have to carry the load all the way from side to side on the two drawer slides. And you can also see that wooden rail at the bottom there, which keeps the containers from coming out when you're driving and you hit the brakes. And this is the right side of the whole mechanism. You can see it's sort of a duplicate of the other side. Yeah, it's really easy to work with this stuff. It cuts easily, and I made up my own little brackets for joining it all together. So this is the back of the Gaucho. I just use a simple gate latch that's hooked onto a wire that goes to the front to be able to detach it. And you can see on the right side, there's a bunch of 80/20 put together there with the other side of the gate latch, and I tied it into the back wall, so when the bed is in Gaucho mode, it won't slide forward on you. Unfortunately, I don't have a really good picture of the upper mechanism for the bunk, but I'll walk you through this picture and do the best we can here. So all this stuff on the left and right side is made of what they call 10 series 80/20. It's a 1-inch by 1-inch size. So you can see I built a little frame up there of the 80/20 material. It's attached to the outside wall from the normal attachments. And then there's two stainless steel tubes come up from the lower area. And that gives us support. So the load is now carried through to the floor and through to those outriggers I put from the frame, rather than being carried by the shell of the trailer. Those two vertical pieces you see are attached to what they call linear bearings, and they've got little twists on them. So what you can do is you can release those two twists, 4 of them actually, 2 on each side, and then the whole mechanism can be pushed up so that the bunk is in a raised position when you don't need it, so you have lots of headroom when you're sitting on the Gaucho or in the bed, and then you can lower it to a lower position when you actually want to have someone go up there. Of course, anybody that's used the upper bunk, especially as an adult, knows in the normal Boler, it's pretty squishy up there, and this lowers it down to a much more reasonable height. It also makes it a lot easier to get in there as well. The next part, I'll show you sort of how the mechanism works for the actual bunk and the way I unfold it and everything when I use it. This next picture shows the finished project. I put a skin over top of everything, just that 1/8 inch maple plywood again, and a little bit of a wood strip there to tidy things up a bit. And there's a little cubby for storing things in, which is quite handy. You can see there's a horizontal piece of aluminum angle iron that captures the actual bunk, and it's screwed down to that as well, so it doesn't fall out of there. The bunk itself is, you can see it's made of 3 sections. When you drop the whole bunk bed down, you can fold those 3 sections out, so you get the same size of bunk that used to be there with the original trailer, but it packs up a little tidier and a lot cleaner looking mechanism as well when you're done. And in the next pictures, I'll show you how I actually made those flat panel sections. There's also a little lip on the front edge there, and that's just to keep any mattress from falling off when the bed's actually folded out. I've contemplated putting some sort of thing up so that if you have little kids up there, they won't roll out of bed. But I don't have any little kids in my life right now. My kids are growing up, so that's a down the road project, I guess. Here's a close-up of the linear bearing. You just turn that handle and it pulls a nut in and tightens everything up, whether you're pushing it all the way up or all the way down. And here's how I built all those panels. I used 1/4 inch Baltic birch top and bottom, and then you can see I added wood into the edges to give something to screw into when I needed to make the connections for the hinges and for hooking up to the drawer slides on the side. Here's a cross section of how I built the rear, all the horizontal panels in the rear. That's expanded polystyrene foam in the middle with the 1/4 inch Baltic birch on both sides and little ribs of 1/8 inch maple in between them. I probably made it a little too strong. I would consider going with thinner material if I did it again to try and bring the weight in the back of the trailer down a bit. And I just glued the whole thing together using Type 3 wood glue. That was the most economical, and it seemed to work really well, and it's held up well. There's been no problems. And here's what the bunk bed looks like when it's folded out and all the way down. So there's 4 containers that sit underneath on that rack, and we put our clothes in there. I made the containers out of 1/4 inch Baltic birch. Okay, here's a couple of dimensions on the upper bunk. The fixed part that's attached to everything at the rear here is 13 inches, and then the next section is 10 inches, and then the next one is with this edge on here, it's 10 1/4. And you can see this is it's a 3/4 inch maple piece on here. It keeps the mattress in place and also adds some strengthening to the whole thing. As you can see, it's all hinged, so it goes back up like this. Oops. Putting it back up again is a bit of a pain. It's I tried to figure out another way of building this, but I've never come up with anything. If anybody else comes up with a great idea, let me know. It's best when you got 2 people. But you release these clamps that are on the sides here, these little rotary clamps. And then, but it gets jammed up as it goes up. So that's the tricky part. That's not bad. Bingo. So that's the bed set up as a Gaucho, and then to bring it down, just release the little handle underneath. That drops down. The two pegs engage into the thing, and then I'll give you a couple of dimensions. It's 24 inches to the front from this fixed part, and I added an extra piece on here because I found it was too short. It was like 21 inches before, and it wasn't enough space underneath your legs. The upper part is 18.5 inches, and obviously there's a rounded edge on there because the back of the trailer is rounded. And then the whole length is 72 and 3/4 roughly. And just this upper one, I didn't do that. Yeah, it's 74.5. Your mileage may vary. And then the side piece over here, this is it's 8 3/4 feet, and it's about 24.25 high. And then the other side is 24 high, and it's well, it varies in depth, but in the middle it's about 8 inches or so in deep. That's about it. Go. If anybody has any questions, put them in the comments down below in the YouTube video or on the boler.ca group. And if you build something like this, let me know. I'd be curious to see what other people, how they interpret it. What would I do different? Weight is the big thing. The 80-20 stuff has weight to it, and the way I built those horizontal sections have weight to it. I try and find ways to remove more mass from the whole thing. I mean, it works really well, and just the fact that those our closed boxes move back and forth when it's either a bed or it's a Gaucho, that's just fantastic. It's really been a game changer in the trailer. But yeah, enjoy. Bye now.